Today's daf is Mem Daled. We're going to start at Mem Gimel on Amud Bet with the new Mishnah, which is halfway, pretty much down the Amud, or not quite, maybe a third of the way down. Mishnah says, "Shechato v'kibel b'mizrak et damo." So the Kohen Gadol, he has to slaughter the bull. This is talking about the Parshal Kohen Gadol, the bull of the Kohen Gadol. He has to slaughter it and receive the blood. And what does he do with the dam? What does he do with the blood? So what he did was he gave it to another Kohen who would stir the blood on the Roved HaRevi'i. So Rashi explains that the way that the floor was set up was in rows of marble stone. So on the fourth row of marble stone was where this Kohen would stand and he would mix the blood. Why? So that it wouldn't coagulate and become hard, and he could still splash it onto the places he needed to splash it. Natal mahta, he takes a fire pan, and he goes up to the mizbeach on top of the altar. And then what does he do? He pushes coals to either side. In other words, what he does is he takes, if you look at a fire, so you have the charcoal on top, and underneath is the ash that's also burning, right? But it's the more pulverized ash is underneath. So he pushed aside the coals and he takes the pulverized ash on the bottom. V'yarad, then he goes down, and he also puts that on the fourth marble row. This time it says Sheba Azara, in the courtyard. Okay, so why did he leave it there? Because now he's going to go get the ketoret, and he's going to, he has to do everything now with his whole thing.
This is the same Kohen who did the shechit.
Everything is Kohen Gadol, because it's Yom Kippur. Yeah, he's doing everything. So he has another guy mixing the blood for him, so he goes and he gets the coals, then he's going to get the ketoret, then he's going to put them together. So, every day when a Kohen would do the ketoret normally, so they would shovel the fire with a silver shovel and they would put it into a gold container. But today, meaning on Yom Kippur, they would use gold even for the digging. In other words, the same shovel that he took the ashes, he didn't transfer it to another keli. Normally he would take it with a silver shovel, put it into a golden container. He transferred it. Here he just took the golden shovel, and that same golden shovel is what he's going to bring into the Kodesh HaKodeshim with him. We'll see why. Every day in a normal day, he would have 4 kav of ashes that he would, or 4 kav of burning ashes that he would take. But today, and he would pour it into a container of 3. So in other words, he would take 4, pour it into a container that only held 3, so he would lose 1. Okay. However, today it says, today he takes 3 and he goes in with 3. In other words, there's no spilling. Because since there's transfer, in the normal ketoret, he takes 4 kav of ash, he pours it into the container and he loses 1 kav. Here, he takes 3 and he goes in with 3. There's no pouring, so he doesn't lose any along the way. Rabbi Yossi says, every other day he digs a se'ah. Okay, a sa'a means 6 kav. Okay, 6 kav, but he pours it into 3 kav. So he agrees that today he takes 3 and he goes in with 3. But according to Rabbi Yossi, he actually loses 50%. Okay, because normally, according to Rabbi Yossi, he's going to take 6 kav and lose 3 of them. Okay, every other day it was a heavy shovel. Today it was a light shovel. Every other day it had a short handle. Today it has a long handle. Today meaning Yom Kippur. Why? Because with the long handle he can tuck it under his arm. He gets more leverage. Because remember, the Kohen Gadol is tired. He has to do the entire service of the day, running around doing all this crazy stuff, and he didn't sleep all night. And they hardly let him eat on Erev Yom Kippur. So he's exhausted and he has all this work to do all day. They're trying to make it easier for him. Every other day they would use a shovel or they would use a container for ketoret that had yellow gold. Today it was red gold. That's what Rabbi Menachem says is another difference. The regular ketoret, meaning the daily ketoret that's brought in the Beit HaMikdash, half of it is brought in the morning, right? Mahatzita b'boker, mahatzita b'arev, right? That's what it says. Half in the morning, half at night. But this, today there's an additional handful, right? He takes with both hands, so it's a mloch of nav, right? Of ketoret. There's the additional one, which is the one that he goes into the Kodesh HaKodeshim with. Right? Every day it's finely ground, but today it's daka min daka. It's extremely fine, double fine. Normally, when the Kohanim go up to the Mizbeach, they go up on the eastern side. Now the Mizbeach, the ramp of the Mizbeach itself stands, so to speak, from west to east or east to west. When you go up, you're actually going north, right? You're walking up the ramp, so you can either be to the east side or to the west side, because it's a wide ramp. It's a 16 amma ramp. Okay, so it's a wide ramp. So when you go up, you go like this. You go up the ramp, and then you turn to your right to go to the Mizbeach. So what does it make sense? It makes sense to go on the eastern side of the ramp, because the eastern side of the ramp is the closest to the Mizbeach. If there's 16 amot, that's a wide area. And amma is 1.5 feet. It's a wide ramp. So when you walk up the ramp, if you walk up the right, since you're going to turn right anyway, it's like, some people, they go in the left lane and then they try to make a right, or they're in the right lane and they try to make a left. They don't want to do that. Since you're going to make a right, walk up the right lane. Okay, so that's what the Kohen would normally do. Now, according to Rashi, how he explains it, this was kavod for the Mizbeach. In other words, the Kohen doesn't want to make any more walking. This is not a fashion show. He doesn't want to do any more walking than he has to do. So since he knows he's going to turn right, he goes up on the right side. But today, Kohen Gadol ole be'emtza v'yored be'emtza. Today, on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol goes straight up the middle of the ramp and straight down the middle of the ramp. And the Gemara is going to explain that this is Mishum Kivodo Shel Kohen Gadol. This shows the honor of the Kohen Gadol, that he's allowed to do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to walk on the edge because he's going to be making a right. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, like some people believe, they own the road, so they can make a right out of the left lane or a left out of the right lane. So the Kohen Gadol does. He's allowed to do that on Yom Kippur, basically, for lack of a better analogy. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Le'olam Kohen Gadol Be'emtza v'yored be'emtza. That really, this is a general, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is not particular to Yom Kippur. This is a halacha of the Kohen Gadol. Anytime the Kohen Gadol serves in the Beit HaMikdash, he's permitted to walk up and down the middle of the ramp. He doesn't have to stay to the right of the ramp. Not just on Yom Kippur, Rabbi Yehuda is saying. According to the other Chachamim, this is a special din of Yom Kippur. According to Rabbi Yehuda, no. All year round, the Kohen Gadol can walk up the middle of the ramp. In any case, B'chol Yom, Kohen Gadol Mekadesh Adav Rav Min HaKiyor, V'ayom Min HaKiton Shel Zahav. That every other day, the Kohen Gadol, like everybody else, would go to the Kiyor. The Kiyor was the laver, it's called. This is something that the water would come out. It had a spout above, a spout below. They would wash their feet, they would wash their hands from the laver, like a regular Kohen. But today, they brought Kiton Shel Zahav. They brought a pitcher of gold to wash his hands and feet. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Le'olam Kohen Gadol Mekadesh Adav Raglav Min HaKiton Shel Zahav. So in other words, Rabbi Yehuda has, in both of these cases, says, what you think is special about Yom Kippur, it's not really special about Yom Kippur, it's really special about the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol always walks in the middle of the ramp, and the Kohen Gadol always washes his hands from a golden pitcher. It's not something particular to do with Yom Kippur, according to Rabbi Yehuda, but it's something that has to do with the Kohen Gadol himself. Now, all other days, there were 4 pyres. In other words, there were 4 arrangements of wood on the Mizbeach. But we'll see why this is. The Gemara is going to explain this further on. But today, on Yom Kippur, V'ayom Chamesh, there's 5. Different Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yosef Omer b'chol yom shalosh v'ayom arba. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chol yom shetayim v'ayom shalosh. In other words, everybody agrees that there's one more on Yom Kippur than every other day. Why? Because on Yom Kippur you have an extra arrangement of wood on the outer Mizbeach in the Beit HaMikdash that they would burn the wood to make ashes for the Kohen Gadol to bring the Ketoret. It was a special edition. So if you normally have 2, then on Yom Kippur you have 3. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. If you normally have 3, then today you have 4. That's what Rabbi Yosef says. And if you normally have 4, then today you'll have 5. That's what Rabbi Meir says. So everyone agrees that there's an additional one on Yom Kippur. The question is, how many do you normally have? That's the machloket. So now the Gemara says, V'akitiv. Doesn't it say? Because we said in the Mishnah that what does the Kohen Gadol do? The Kohen Gadol slaughters his bull receives the blood, hands the blood over to another Kohen who's going to stand on the fourth marble row, the fourth row of marble on the floor of the Hechal. The Hechal is inside the Kodesh. Remember, there were 3 levels in the Beit HaMikdash, or we're going to see there are really 4, but let's say there's the courtyard. Okay, now the courtyard, as the Gemara is going to say on the next daf, the courtyard is divided into 2 sections, up to the Mizbeach, and then between the Mizbeach and the building. In other words, the courtyard was outdoors. There was no roof. That's where the large Mizbeach, where the Korbanot were offered, it was outside. Once you pass the Mizbeach, now you're in an area of 22 amot, I believe it is, between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. The Ulam is the antechamber, is a chamber that leads into the Hechal. The Hechal, oh, there's a drawing in there. The Hechal has, okay, there you go. Do you have it? Okay, the Hechal is a, can I see that? So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so the I don't know how to use this diagram exactly. What is this? Oh, I see. This is the Mizbeach?
This is the Mizbeach right here.
Okay.
This is the ramp you were talking about. And this
Okay.
is
Where's the courtyard?
This is the courtyard.
Oh, here?
Yeah, so then this doesn't show the whole thing. Where does it show the whole thing? Let me see if I can find it. Oh, this is the. Oh, I see.
This is the.
I see how it works. Right. Okay, so this is where you come in. This is the courtyard. This is the Mizbeach.
Outside.
This is the Ulam, and this is the Hechal, and the Kodesh HaKodeshim is in here. Okay, so
The Ulam is where?
the Ulam is the entryway, this wider piece.
Okay.
It's wider than the Hechal. Okay, and then this is when you go into the Kodesh, and eventually the Kodesh HaKodeshim, I guess, is this little room on the end here. Yeah, 55. Yeah, I can't see the number. Yeah. That's Kodesh HaKodeshim. So basically, that's the Mizbeach of the outer Mizbeach. So that doesn't have a roof. But once you go in here, this is already a roofed area. This is the Ulam that we're going to learn about. Okay, this is the Kodesh, where you have like the menorah and the Shulchan are inside the Kodesh, and then the Kodesh HaKodeshim, which just has the Aron inside. There's nothing else in that area besides the Aron.
Where's the Ram going to the Kodesh HaKodeshim?
What? This is the Kodesh HaKodeshim in here. It's inside. The Kodesh HaKodeshim is indoors. So in any case, the point is v'aketiv v'chol adam lo yeh b'ol moed. It says that nobody's allowed to be in the Ohel Moed. Ohel Moed means not in the Kodesh and not in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So nobody's allowed to be in that building when the Kohen Gadol goes to bring the Ketoret. Nobody's allowed to be in there. So how can you tell me that you tell a Kohen to stand in the Hechal meaning the room that's also in the structure, right? Not outside, not the courtyard, but in the actual Ohel Moed, in the actual Kodesh. How could you have a Kohen standing in there when the Kohen Gadol goes to offer the Ketoret? It says V'chol adam lo yeh b'Ohel Moed. Right? It says he's not allowed to. So Amar Rav Yehuda Tenei Shel Hechal. It doesn't mean that the Kohen that's mixing the blood is going to be in the Hechal. It means it's going to be the 4th row of marble stones outside the Hechal in the Azarah. In other words, he's going to be in the courtyard, not in the Ohel Moed, because of course he's not allowed to be in the inside Ohel Moed. He's not allowed to be inside the structure. He can only be in the outdoor area when the Kohen Gadol is going in to offer the Ketoret. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, the Rabbi said, it says that nobody's allowed to be in the Ohel Moed. You might think that this means that even in the Azara, meaning to say that the entire Beit HaMikdash has to be evacuated. Even the outdoor areas maybe need to be evacuated when the Kohen Gadol goes in. Talmud Lomar be'ohel moed. That's why it says be'ohel moed. Specifically, nobody can be inside the building, which contains what? The golden Mizbeach, the menorah, and the Shulchan, and then further in it is the Kodesh HaKodeshim, but they're all in one building. That building only Kohanim can go in anyway. Okay, but the point is that nobody's allowed to be in there when the Kohen Gadol goes in. This might mean only in the Midbar. Shiloh ubet olamim minayin. How do you know that this halacha applies even to Shiloh, even to the Mishkan when it was located in Shiloh, or in the Beit HaMikdash? How do you know? Talmud Omar Bakodesh, because it says Bakodesh when he goes into the holy place, right? When v'chol adam lo yeh b'ol moed. that it says that when nobody's allowed to be there, bivo'o lechaper b'kodesh, when he goes to atone for the kodesh, meaning it doesn't matter whether it's Oel Moed specifically, whatever the structure is, that structure has to be vacant except for the Kohen Gadol. He goes in privately when he goes in. Okay? And then the Gemara asks, or the Braita asks, Enli ela b'shat haktara. This only refers to when the Kohen Gadol goes to bring the Ketoret. B'shat matan damim minayin. But remember, what does the Kohen Gadol, we're going to learn in the very next Mishnayot, what does the Kohen Gadol do after he brings the ketoret? He puts the blood achat v'achat achat u'shtayim. He puts the blood of his par. He puts the blood of the seirim, of the goats, right? First he puts the blood separately inside the kodesh HaKodeshim, against the parochet, and then on the golden altar. He mixes them together, puts it on the golden altar, right? That's the way that it goes. So how do you know that even when he's applying the blood, nobody can be in there? First he offers the ketoret, then he goes out, gets the dam, and starts applying the blood. How do we know that even that part nobody's allowed to be inside the kodesh? Talmud Lamar bivo'o lechaper. When he comes in to atone, meaning the whole process of atonement that the Kohen Gadol has to do, it has to be alone. How do we know that when he goes in, there's not allowed to be any Kohanim? But how do we know even when he's coming out, it has to be empty? Can they go in and greet him as he's coming out? No, minayin, because it says ad tzeto, Talmud Amar ad tzeto, until he comes out. Okay? Meaning they have to wait for him to come out first before they're allowed to go into the Kodesh. Nobody's allowed to be in there from the minute he goes in to offer the Ketoret while he's doing the blood service of the Kodesh HaKodeshim and the Kodesh, and then when he comes out, then people are allowed to go back in. It says that he will atone for himself and his household and the entire Jewish people. So it says that his kapara has to come before the kapara of his family. The kapara of his family has to come before the kapara of the Kohanim in general. The kaparat echav kohanim kodemet the kaparat kol kahal Yisrael, and the kapara of his family, the Kohanim, has to come before the kapara of the entire Jewish people. That's why first he does a vidui for himself and his family, then he does it for himself, his family, and the Kohanim, then he does it for the Jewish people on the Seir HaMishtaleach. Amar Mor, the master said, we go back to this Braita that we just read, and it said that the only times that people are not allowed to be, there's not allowed to be any Kohanim in the entire Kodesh building. Not just the Kodesh HaKodeshim, but even in the Kodesh, there's not allowed to be anybody in there when the Kohen Gadol goes in. So my mashma, what does it mean that he's only allowed to go in? They're only not allowed to be there in the times of the Haktara. Amar Rava says, V'chein Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, and so did Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi said, V'chein Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Karav, V'chiper ba'ado v'ad beto v'ad kol kal Yisrael, that it says, the pasuk says he should atone for himself and his family and the entire Jewish people. What one act of kapara, one act of atonement is equal for everyone? Because remember, the par that he brings, the bull that he brings, is really for him and for his family. Right? That's for him and for his family. And for the Kohanim. And the sa'ir that he brings, the sa'ir is for the rest of the Jewish people. So it's not equal. There's two different actions. What action does he do that's equal for everyone? Have omer ze haketoret. Right? So that's why it says this is the ketoret. This is the offering of the ketoret. So meaning that from the pasuk you would say, when is nobody allowed to be in there? When he goes in to do the ketoret, because that's the one act that he does that's for everybody. But then when he goes to do the blood service of the par is only for the Kohanim. The blood service of the sa'ir is for the rest of the Jews. So maybe for that somebody's allowed to be inside. That's why we had to bring the pasuk that no, as long as he's in there, bivo'o lechaper, as long as he's doing some kapara, nobody's allowed to be in there.
Is this when they hear to the bells on his robe, and bells? And
they know to leave. No, because he wasn't wearing that, because he was wearing white. Remember when he goes into the Kodesh HaKodeshim? So he was wearing that. Normally, just not on Yom Kippur. Not for this service of Yom Kippur. For the other services, remember, he keeps changing. When he's doing the regular service, he wears the bells and everything. So, uktoret mechaperet. Is it true that the ketoret is mechaperet? The ketoret is an atonement? Yes, the Hatanei Rabbi Hanania says, Lamadnu shel-ketoret shemechaperet. We learn that the ketoret, that the offering of incense, is also not just korbanot, but the offering of incense is also a source of atonement. Shneimar, as it says, Vayiten et haketoret vaychaper la'am. Because when the plague came, what did Aharon do? When the plague came, he went and he put the ketoret and he saved the people. So ketoret can be a kapara as well. V'tanav devei Rabbi Ishmael, and the yeshiva of Rabbi Ishmael taught, Alma haketoret mechaperet. What does ketoret atone for? Al lashon hara. For lashon hara, why? Yavod davar shebachashai vaychaper al maseh chashai. Because something secret should come and be a kapara for something that's secret. In other words, when you talk behind people's back and you say lashon hara, that's something in secret. You don't do that openly. So something that's private, in other words, the Kohen goes in to offer it privately, and we're going to see that not only does the Kohen go privately when he goes on Yom Kippur, but even on a daily basis, when the Kohen goes in to offer ketoret, it has to be private. Nobody else is allowed to be in there. Even on a daily basis. It's not the Kohen Gadol. A regular Kohen brings it, but only the Kohen is allowed to go in. Everyone else has to vacate. So that means it's something done privately, so it's a kapara for things that are private, meaning for lashon hara. Tanan hatam, we learned over there, and this Mishnah is, it says, is in Masechet Kelim. So it says, that at the time that they're bringing the ketoret, you have to separate not only from the hechal. Now the hechal is the area that is roofed, right? Not only from that, but from the area ben ha'olam v'lamizbeach, between the mizbeach and the ulam. Remember, we said when you walk into the courtyard, it's an open area. There's no roof. You walk up to the mizbeach. You pass the mizbeach, you're walking west. Between the mizbeach and what's called the ulam, which enters into what? Into the roofed part of the Beit HaMikdash, is 22 amot. That space between the mizbeach and the building is called ben ha'ulam v'lam mizbeach. Okay? So that area also has to be vacated. Not only the hechal inside the building, but also that area. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, Lo shanu ela b'shat haktarat hechal. Aval b'shat haktarat lefnai v'lefnim. Me'echal parshe ben ha'ulam v'lam mizbeach lo parshe. Rabbi Elazar says that's only true for the ketoret that's brought on a daily basis. Why? Now we can understand the logic. Think about it this way. On Yom Kippur, where is the ketoret brought? Into the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies. So what should you have to vacate? Just the adjacent area, which is the Hechal, the Kodesh. Since the Kodesh HaKodashim is where the ketoret is being brought, the Kodesh has to be vacated. But on a normal day, not Yom Kippur, where is the ketoret brought? Into the Kodesh. Onto the golden altar, the Mizbeach HaZahav, the golden altar. So if that's the case, what should be vacated? The adjacent area. What's the adjacent area? Between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. In other words, you go one further. So the Hechal for sure has to be vacated because that's the Kodesh itself. But if you think about it, that the adjacent that area and the adjacent area have to be vacated. So when the Kohen Gadol goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim, certainly the Kodesh HaKodashim, nobody else is allowed to go in. And the Hechal, the Kodesh, has to be vacated. When the Ketoret is being brought in the Kodesh, then Ben Ha'olam V'La Mizbeach has to be vacated. The next area over has to be vacated as well. Okay? So that's what Rabbi Elazar is saying. Mativ Ravada Barava. Ravada Barava raised an objection. And some say that it was anonymously raised and it wasn't Ravada Barava. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kishem Sheporshin B'Bein Ha'olam V'La Mizbeach B'Shat HaKtorah Kach Porshin B'Shat Matan Par Kohen Mashiach O Par Helem Devar Shel Tzibur Usirei Avodat Kochavim. Rabbi Yossi says, just like we separate between the Ulam V'La Mizbeach, in other words, we vacate the area between the Mizbeach and the building, okay, at the time that the Ketoret is being offered, so too do we have to vacate that area when the blood of the Par Kohen Mashiach, the Par Helem Davar Shel Tzibur, and the Sirei Avodat Kochavim are being offered. Now these are three offerings that are detailed in Masechet Horayot that are brought under very special circumstances. The Par Kohen Mashiach is if the Kohen Gadol makes a halachic decision that is wrong and he follows it. So then he has to bring a special korban. The part Helem Davar Shel Tzibur is where the Bet Din makes a psak. They make a psikat din that's incorrect. They have to bring a korban, special korban.
Not mazid,
No, they made a mistake and everybody followed it. Or Seirei Avodat Kochavim is where the Bet Din told the Jews, oh, you're allowed to do this action, and they realized that they caused them to do idolatry by accident, okay? It's by accident, but there's still a korban that's brought for that. So this is detailed in Masechet Horayot. But in any case, what's the relevance here? What's the point? So he says, so he says that just like when the Kohen brings Ketoret, you have to separate, you can't be in that area between the Mizbeach and the Hechal. So too, when the Kohen Gadol is bringing these special korbanot, where the blood is applied in the Kodesh, that's unique. The only time you apply blood, normally in the Kodesh, all you have is Ketoret. You don't have blood. The only time you bring any blood of any korbanot into the Kodesh is Yom Kippur and these special things. The Par Kohen Mashiach, when the Kohen Gadol makes an error, when the Bet Din makes an error of some sort, then blood also comes into the Mizbeach. Why? Because it's a communal kapara. It's a communal kapara, just like Yom Kippur. So what does it say? That what's the difference between the area between the Mizbeach and the building itself? He says that the building itself, you can't be in there whether the Ketoret is being offered or whether it isn't being offered. Meaning, even when the blood is being applied, you can't be in there. But between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, in other words, that outer area right in front of the Ulam, you can't be there when the Ketoret is being offered, but any other time you could be there. So the Gemara asks, what does that show you then? That shows you Bishat Haktara Mia Parshe. This is obviously talking my love Bishat Haktara Dilifnai V'Lifnim. Isn't it saying that you're not allowed to be in that outer area? Okay, if we want to number the areas, okay, Kodesh HaKodeshim is 1. The Hechal, the Kodesh, is 2. And 3 is this place, Ben Ha'olam V'Lam Mizbeach, immediately outside. So the question is, how far away do you have to be? So Rabbi Elazar said that for the Ketoret going into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, you only have to be out of area number 2. Because it's adjacent, because the Ketoret is going into area number 1. But you don't have to be out of area number 3. But this Braita is saying, area number 3, you have to vacate Bishat Haktara. At the time that the Ketoret is being offered, you have to be out of that third area also. So the Gemara says, no, lo b'shat haktara dehechal. It's only talking about the offering of Ketoret in the Hechal, meaning the regular Ketoret, not the Kodesh HaKodeshim one. The Kodesh HaKodeshim one, you only have to be out of area 2. But the one in the Hechal, you have to be out of area 3, because the Ketoret is being offered in area 2. So you have to do one more than that. Then how can you say what is the difference between the Hechal and the area Ben Ha'olam V'Lam Mizbeach? In other words, how can you ask what's the difference between between area 2 and area 3? There's a huge difference, because area 2, you're not allowed to be in there under 2 circumstances. You're not allowed to be in there when the Ketoret is being offered in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, because it's the adjacent area. And you're not allowed to be there, obviously, when the Ketoret is being offered. Oh, look at that. When the Ketoret is being offered... The rain is coming down heavy. That you're not allowed to be there when the Ketoret is being offered, even in the Kodesh, obviously, because that itself is the area. In other words, area number 2 has 2 restrictions. It's restricted as an adjacent area. Nobody's allowed to be in there on Yom Kippur, and it's restricted, obviously, when the Ketoret is being offered in itself. However, when it comes to right, that the only time you have to get out of area 3 is when Ketoret is being offered in area 2, right? So basically what the Gemara is saying is, why did the Braita say what's the difference between the Hechal and between area 2 and 3? Oh, because area 2 you have to separate whether there's Ketoret being offered or whether it's during the blood being offered. But area 3 only during the Ketoret. That's not the only difference. That's not the only difference. The other difference is the Hechal, you have to be out of there for 2 different reasons. Ben Ha'olam V'Lam Mizbeach, only one reason. Only one circumstance you have to be out of there. So the Gemara answers
we're saying area 3 is 48. This one.
I can't do, yeah. Area...
No.
No, right outside. No, right outside of here. Here.
Oh.
Right outside of here.
The 20
It's
amot.
outside, right? The 22 amot between the mizbeach and the ulam. Between them, yeah. The ulam is considered like an extension of the hechal. We're gonna say.
Oh.
Yeah. So hakatane ella shabahechal porshin bebishat haktara ben shlo b'shat haktara uben ulam v'lamizbeach en porshin ella b'shat haktara. So what the Gemara is saying is that's exactly what the Braita means. In other words, that's exactly what the Braita is saying. That when it comes to the area in number 2, the hechal, there you can't be in the hechal whether you're offering ketoret in the hechal or you're offering it or you're not offering it. Meaning whether you're offering it in the kodesh HaKodeshim or you're offering it in the hechal, you're not allowed to be in there. Whereas ben ha'olam v'lamizbeach, in that area 3, you're only not allowed to be there when there's ketoret being offered in the hechal, right next to it. But when it's being offered 2 steps away in area 1, you don't have to be outside of that area. You don't have to be 3 steps removed. Only 1.
Of course, these are Kohanim, not the regular.
Kohanim are only people allowed there anyway. Yeah. So then then the Gemara asks, but what about the fact that there's another difference, which is that in the hechal, you have to be separate, you have to be out of the hechal, both when blood is being applied in the hechal and when blood is being applied lifnai v'lifnim. Remember, on Yom Kippur, he goes in with the blood to the Kodesh HaKodeshim and to the Kodesh. You have to be out of the hechal, out of area 2 for both of those things. Whereas you only have to be outside of area 3 when blood is being applied in area 2. But when blood is being applied in area 1, you don't have to. So that's another, it's not just a difference of ketoret, it's also a difference of blood application, right? So the Gemara says, Amar Rava, Shem Prisha Achati. It doesn't matter, it's the same concept. Separation is separation. In other words, the point is, when an activity is going on in room 1, in area 1, you have to be out of area 2. When an activity is going on in area 2, you have to be out of not only area 2, but also area 3. Okay, that's the so we don't have to specify. Well, blood offering, ketoret offering, it's all the same. The point is, when there's anything going on in area 2, then area 3 has to be vacated as well as area 2. When something's going on in area 1, only area 2 has to be vacated. That's basically a summary of what we just learned, right? Now, Amar Mor, the master said, Kach porshin b'shat hamatan par kohen mashiach par helem davar shel tziboru seir avodat kochavim. So just like you have to separate from area 2 and 3 at the time that ketoret is being offered in the hechal, you also have to separate from area 2 and 3 at the time when they're bringing the blood of these korbanot, that are when the Kohen Gadol makes a mistake, when the Bet Din makes a mistake, and so on. Minalan, where do we get this from? Amar Rabbi Pedat. Rabbi Pedat said, Atya kapara kapara miyom kippurim, because in both cases it says kapara. It's a kapara for the entire Jewish people, both in Yom Kippur and these korbanot, and because of that we compare the two, and we say that just like they're both kaparot that happen in the hechal, that happen in area 2, so they both have the same rule that one has to vacate area 3. Now there's further areas. There's area 4, which we could call area 4 the area of the Mizbeach itself, and then there's area 5, which is where the Kohanim and where the Jews are allowed to stand. There's multiple areas here. Amar Rav Achabar Ava, and according to the side it should say Rav Adabar Ava, because there's no such Rav Achabar Ava. Shema mina ma'alot deoraita. Now this is an interesting thing. He says you see from this that the ma'alot are deoraita. What does he mean by ma'alot? He doesn't mean steps. He means that the different areas that are identified as having different levels of Kedusha. For example, the area, so Rashi says on the side, the Beit HaMikdash, the Har HaBayit has one level of Kedusha, and the Ezrat Nashim has one level, and the Ezrat Yisrael has another level, and then there's an area where only the Kohanim are allowed to go, and then there's Ben HaOlam V'Lamizbeach has another level, and then there's the area in the Hechal that has another level. In other words, the idea of all these sections is deoraita. How do we know it's deoraita? Because he's going to say v'hachi gemirilo, and this must be an oral tradition. Why? Because if you're going to tell me that these distinctions, in other words, that really there's only 3 distinctions. There's Kodesh, there's Kodesh HaKodeshim, there's Kodesh, and there's Azara, there's courtyard. But this distinction of, the part of the courtyard from the Mizbeach, between the Mizbeach and the Hechal is a further level of Kedusha, and you have to vacate it. It's area 3. Okay? The fact that we subdivide the courtyard even further, if you're going to tell me that's only rabbinic, then wait a second. So he says, because if you're going to tell me it's all rabbinic, then and the rabbis made a gezerah, what did they say? Really, you only need to vacate area 2. We're going to make you vacate the adjacent area 3. But if the adjacent area 3, really is the entire courtyard. There's no distinction really between that area between the Mizbeach and the Hechal and the entire courtyard outside. The whole outside area is really one thing, so why didn't they make people vacate the entire Beit HaMikdash? Why only that area right next to the Hechal? If really the only place you're not allowed to be is in the Hechal itself, and the rabbis came along and made a stringency and said don't even go to the place in front of the Hechal, so if there's no real distinction between in front of the Hechal and the rest of the courtyard, why didn't they get you out of the entire courtyard? So it must be that area has to be vacated min ha-Torah. It's really, the Torah recognizes it as a special place. It's not just a rabbinic thing. So the Gemara answers no. You could say it's really just rabbinic. You could. Why? Kevan de lo mafseke midi lo min kara milta. Azara kevan de ikam mizbeach hachitzon de mafsik min kara milta. There's a huge difference. Because up to the mizbeach you have a landmark. You know where you're not allowed to pass. But between the mizbeach and the hechal, somebody could walk into the hechal. When there's something blocking you, you see the mizbeach, okay, I can't go there. So the rabbis didn't want you to stand in a place right next to the hechal because the kohen will walk in. But when you're behind the mizbeach, you realize there's something reminding you can't go further. And you won't accidentally walk into the hechal and violate the deoraita of going in. So the Gemara says it could very well be rabbinic. It's a rabbinic stricture to consider that area past the mizbeach as almost an extension of area 2. But really, it's not. Amar Rava says, kedushat ulam ve'echal hadam miltahi. You can learn from this that the ulam and the hechal are one thing. In other words, what's the ulam? The ulam is part of. Remember, there's a structure, and when you walk into that structure, you're in the ulam, the antechamber, which is wider than the hechal. Then you go further, and you're in what's called the kodesh. But the whole time you're inside. You go into the kodesh, and what's the kodesh? That's where the menorah, that's where you have the shulchan, the mizbeach hazahav. So the question is, what is the status of the ulam? When you first walk in, you're in the antechamber. Is that considered part of the hechal that's further in? Or is that considered part of the courtyard? It straddles both, because it's not really the kodesh, because it doesn't have the menorah, it doesn't have the shulchan. But it's not really the courtyard, because it's fenced off from the courtyard. It's walled, and it has a roof.
Purpose.
Right, so it's to give kavod, but what status does it have? So Rava says, I'm going to suggest that it's really part of the kodesh, and therefore a person is not allowed to even be in the ulam. According to the Torah, a person is not allowed to be in the ulam when the kohen goes in to bring the ketoret. That would be the difference, right? Because if the ulam is really considered part of the courtyard, but we wanted to make it fancy, so we put a roof, we made it part of the same structure as the kodesh, but really it's not the kodesh, then what would we say? Oh, biblically, you're allowed to stand in the ulam when the kohen goes in, because it's not really area 2. It's really part of area 3. Okay, so the Gemara says, because if you're going to tell me that the ulam is not really part of the kodesh, ulam gufei gezerah, then that means it's a gezerah already that you're not allowed to go into the ulam. Because if you're going to tell me that the ulam is not part of the kodesh, you're really allowed to stand in the ulam when the kohen goes in to bring the ketoret. But the rabbi said you're not allowed to, gezerah, because you might walk into the kodesh. So if that's true, then ulam gufei gezerah v'nekom v'negzor gezerah legzerah. Then by telling me that I can't stand in the area in front of the ulam, it's a double gezerah. You're telling me I can't stand in the area in front of the ulam, what we called area 3. Why? Because I might step into the ulam. But the ulam itself, it's only because I might step into the kodesh. So that's the rabbis don't want to. How many rules are they going to make? Lo, the Gemara says not true. Ulam ubeina ulam ve'lam mizbeach hada kedushahi hechal ve'ulam shete kedushot. No, the answer is like this: that really the ulam and the area between the ulam and the mizbeach are all one area, and it's one gezerah. it's rabbinic. The idea that the adjacent area has to be vacated, the idea that the area between the Mizbeach and the Hechal has to be vacated when the Ketoret is being brought is rabbinic. And they extended it from the Ulam, even though the Ulam is inside, all the way to the Mizbeach. It's all one Gezerah. It's all one gezerah. So really, on a biblical level, min Torah, we would say that area between the Mizbeach and the Hechal, it's nothing. You're allowed to stand there when the Ketoret is being offered. But the rabbis didn't want a person to make a mistake and walk in to the Hechal. So they said you can't walk in anywhere near that area during that time. The Gemara says, every other day he would use a shovel of silver. Today he uses gold. The reason is because Hashem cares about the money of the Jewish people. He doesn't want to waste our money. So he doesn't want us to use the most expensive shovel, because it's going to be used and it's going to wear out. And on Yom Kippur, instead of shoveling with one shovel and transferring the ashes to another shovel, he used the same shovel. So the Gemara asks, "My ta'ama mishum chulshat kohen gadol," because we want to make it easier for the kohen gadol, and all the transferring of things from one vessel to another is more work. We want to make it easier for him. He's weak. We said that all other days he took our 4 kavin of ash, and he ended up with 3. Right, that's what it said. Tana, it says in the Braita, "Nitpazru lo b'shalar kav gehalim mechabedan le'ama." Okay, so it says, and a kav of coals would be lost, and he would knock them into the amma. The amma was this water, sort of like the sewage system of the Beit HaMikdash, that would take whatever was not being used out of the Beit HaMikdash. So when he would pour these 4 kavin on a normal day, he would pour these 4 kavin into a 3 kav container. He would lose one of the kavin. But we said that on Yom Kippur, he kept all 3 that he took. He didn't transfer any. But normally, he would lose a kav that would be kicked into be pushed into the stream that would take it out. So the Gemara says, Tanechada kav. One Braita says it was a kav. Okay, one Braita v'tani idach kabayim, and one says that it was 2 kavim. We understand the one that say kav. That's the rabbis, because the rabbi said that on every other day he would bring 4 kavim and he would end up with 3, so he loses a kav. But who says 2? So, but what about the kabayim? Elahach tetane kabayim mani lo Rabbanan velo Rabbi Yosei. But because Rabbi Yosei says that you take 3, remember he had said that you take 6 normally and you lose 3. Rabbi Yosei had said you take 6 sa'ah, 6 kav, and pour it into a 3 kav. So you only get 50% of what you took. Okay? The rabbis say you take 4 and you end up with 3, so you lose 1. But nobody says you lose 2, 1 or 3, not 2. So Amar Rav Chisda says, Rabbi Yishmael ben Oshel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokahi. It's really Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokah. Titani Rabbi Yishmael ben Oshel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokah Omer b'shal kabayim haya machnis. That according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokah, Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokah, he would go in with 2 kabim. So in other words, he would take 4, like the rabbi said, but he would spill out 2, not 1. So he didn't go in with 3, he went in with 2. So that's why he says 2. Rav Ashi amar afilu tema Rabbi Yossi. Actually, we could even reconcile the 2 kabim with Rabbi Yossi. How so? Because v'hachi kama is what it means. B'chol yom hayachote b'shel sa'a midbarit u'ma'areh l'toch shloshet kavin yerushalmiyot. That it means that every day, it's talking about the normal case, not Yom Kippur, that every day he would take 6 kavin. He would take a sa'ah midbarit, because at a certain point they adjusted the measures. What was once 6 kav later became 5 kav. 5 kavim. So the fact that he had 6 kavim midbarit, according to the original desert measure of Moshe Rabbeinu, if he poured it into 3 kavim, later that measure of 6 kavim became only 5 kavim. So what was once 6, it was like inflation, What was once 6 is now 5, okay? So what happens is, if you take 6 midbariot, 6 kavim of the midbar, and you now pour it into 3, really what you have is 5 contemporary kav. 6 biblical kav is 5, so to speak, contemporary kav. So when you pour it into a container of 3 contemporary kav, how much are you going to lose? 2 contemporary kav. You're losing that because the measurements changed. That's why losing 2 is in contemporary terms, it says. Okay? That's why where the adjustment would go. And then according to Rabbi Yossi, who says that you take a se'ah, you take 6 kabim, he meant you take 6 biblical kabim, you pour it into 3 contemporary kav, and you end up losing 2 contemporary kav. Every other day it would be a heavy shovel, and today it's going to be a light shovel. So Tana b'chol yom hayta gilda ava. Okay, it says every day its thickness, it would be very thick. Okay, v'ayom rach, but they used a lighter metal, a softer, lighter metal for Yom Kippur. B'chol yom hayta kitzara v'ayom aruka. Why every other day did he use a shovel with a short handle and today a long handle? So that he could use his arm. In other words, since it has a long handle, he can tuck it under his arm. It helps him leverage the weight a little bit better than having to hold it in his hand. That every other day it didn't have any bell attached to it. But on Yom Kippur it did. Divrei Ben Hasagan. These were the words of Ben Hasagan. So what does it say? Well, Rashi explains what's niashtik. Taba'at birosha. That on normal days, the ketoret, there was no sound. But on Yom Kippur, they put a little ring on the end that would bang when he was walking, so that to fulfill the mitzvah, v'nishma kol b'voel hakodesh, which is very interesting. Why do you need a ring to bang on there only on Yom Kippur? Because every other day, he's wearing the big day kehuna that have the bells. So that's why it says v'nishma kol b'voel hakodesh, that they're going to hear when he goes in the kodesh, because he's wearing the big day kehuna have bells. But today on Yom Kippur, when he goes in to do the ketoret, he's not wearing any bells, right? Because he's wearing the white garments. So therefore, what does he have to do? He has to attach a little hook onto the shovel that's going to make the sound as he walks in. Every other day, the gold was yellow. Amar Rav Chisda says, Shiva zehavim hen. There are 7 types of gold: zahav, uzahav tov, uzahav ofir, uzahav mufaz, uzahav shachut, uzahav sagor, uzahav parvaim. These are 7 types of gold. Okay, yeah, zahav uzahav tov dechtiv uzahav haaretz tov. Because it says in the Torah, the gold of that land was tov, it was good. So there's 2 kinds. There's standard gold, there's good gold. Ofir datim ofir. When it says the zahav ofir, it means that it comes from a place called Ofir that made very good gold. Okay, zahav mufaz, zahav that is shining, luminescent somehow. This gold, she domeh lepaz. It's similar to it shines like a pearl. That's what Rashi says. Mativ kemargalit. Now we're on Memhei Amud Aleph. Zahav shachut. What does it mean? Zahav shachut could literally mean zahav slaughtered zahav, but that's not what it means. Slaughtered gold. Shachut means shenidve bachut kachut. That it was fine gold that could be sewn. You could use it as golden thread. Zahav sagur. What does it mean? Closed gold. Bishash niftah. That at the time you start selling this gold, kol hanuyot nisgarot, every other store closes. It was so good that everybody would go for the best. Zahav parvayim, what does zahav parvayim mean? Shedome ledam haparim. It's called gold of cows because it looks like the blood of cows. In other words, it was a reddish type of gold. And we saw that according to the last opinion in the Mishnah, towards the end of the Mishnah, he said that that they used a gold that was a red gold on this day. Who said that? Divrei Rabbi Menachem. Rabbi Menachem said that they used a reddish gold, not a yellow gold, on this day, because it looks like the blood of the parim. Rav Ashi says, Hamishahin. There are not 7 types of gold. There are really only 5. Kol chad v'chad itbe zahav uzahav tov. And when we counted gold and good gold as 2 types of gold. He says they're not 2 types of gold. They're 2 grades of gold. So in each one of the 5 types of gold, meaning zahav ofir, zahav mufaz, zahav shachut, zahav sagur, zahav parvayim, there are 2 grades. There's zahav and zahav tov within each of those. They're not 2 separate categories, but they're 2 grades within every category. Tani Nami Achi, we also learned a similar braita, b'chol yom haya zahava yarok, v'yom adom, that every day they would use a yellow gold for the ketoret, to bring the ketoret in. They would bring it in a container of yellow gold, v'hayom adom, but today it would be, meaning on Yom Kippur, it would be red. V'hainu zahav parvayim shedomeh ledam haparim. And this is what's called the gold of parvayim, because it looks like the blood of cows. In other words, it reminded you of the kapara service, the whole atonement service of Yom Kippur. They used a different color.